When your 2FA techs take the scenic route through shady telecoms, your Outlook gets hacked by a foreign government, and your router thinks 2015 was peak security. From Denmark declaring digital independence to Zero Trust finally getting real-world blueprints, it's clear the only thing more outdated than your router's firmware is your faith in email. Up next on this episode of Insights into Technology.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, episode 30, The Signal and the Noise. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and this is your tech news of the week. First up is an article to us from Reuters. When your Outlook isn't looking so good. The Washington Post has launched an inquiry after discovering a cyber attack late last Thursday targeting the Microsoft email accounts of several staffers. The attack was specifically directed at those on the national security and economic teams, including China beat reporters. Though limited in scope and seemingly confined to internal communications, the intrusion is suspected to have been carried out by a foreign government, echoing similar attacks on News Corp in 2022. In response, the Washington Post forced a credential reset for all employees, beefed up its cybersecurity protocols, and emphasized no customer data or broader infrastructure was compromised. One of the interesting takeaways on this one here happens to be the fact that they're targeting journalists. And it's not the first time a nation state has targeted the media, but it does demonstrate a disturbing trend. And it reminds us that journalists remain high-value targets for foreign adversaries, especially those seeking to influence geopolitical events or gather geopolitical intelligence. And it's a persistent risk that enterprises need to keep in mind. This incident also shows us that despite all of our best efforts, email still is the weakest link. Email accounts, even via trusted providers like Microsoft 365, can serve as entry points, requiring extra security. And that's something administrators definitely need to keep in mind. Just because you're in a trusted platform like that does not necessarily mean it's free from risks. This also highlights, and I think we kind of need to give the Washington Post a pat on the back here. It highlights their incident response plans and how quickly they've responded to this and their containment strategies. Their swift credential resets and forensic engagement underscore the importance of swift response and organizational resilience. The acknowledgement, too. So many companies, for some reason, want to avoid the acknowledgement, thinking it's going to protect them from reputational damage. But in reality, as soon as you start trying to cover up something like this, that's where you start really damaging your reputation. This also brings up the topic of secure communications, which even our federal government seems to be struggling with these days. The Post's standard use of Slack and Signal for sensitive exchanges serves as a reminder for enterprises that you should adopt a secure source of encrypted channels for your critical communications. That's kind of what saved them here more than anything else, is that they took those types of conversations outside of email. So this was one that we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on. This signals a disturbing trend in cyber attacks against journalists. and they're not monetarily motivated. They are almost exclusively politically motivated or intelligence gathering in nature. And that combined with many other indicators of compromise and attack recently kind of gives me the feeling that there's definitely something bigger that's brewing. I think that much is certain. Next up is an article from Bloomberg. The lowest cost routing, highest risk security. A recent Bloomberg investigation reveals that SMS-based two-factor authentication codes used daily for login security are vulnerable. Though designed to be one-time and private, these codes traverse a complex web of outsourced telecom providers, globally driven by cost savings and the philosophy of lowest cost routing. This exposes them to interception by multiple intermediaries who can view codes in transit. With evidence showing that large tech and financial firms rely on the same services, experts urge organizations to reconsider SMS-based two-factor authentication and transition to more secure alternative applications like authentication apps, passkeys, or hardware tokens. Now, this is one that we've known for quite some time that SMS has been a problem. The philosophy of second factor out of bandwidth authentication, I think, is valid. I think the critical portion or the critical factor here is the implementation. If you poorly implement a lock on your door, if you could have the most sophisticated, most secure lock on your door. If you don't lock it or if you leave keys laying around, it doesn't matter how good your lock is. In this case here, SMS, the concept of second factor authentication is valid, but the implementation of SMS is like leaving your keys laying around because it passes through so many people's hands. This raises significant concerns with so many things that we're moving into the cloud now, so many things that need to be authenticated because they're publicly facing, and we've not fully embraced these other standards out there that would make those efforts more secure. Companies using SMS two-factor risk account takeovers if adversaries intercept these codes, which makes the classic SMS method the weakest link in the identity security framework, which to a certain extent is kind of interesting because typically that weak link is the human factor here. But technology is kind of rearing its ugly head here as new attacks and new technologies emerge. With banks issuing warnings and NIST deprecating SMS for two-factor, enterprises face increasing pressure to phase out insecure methods or face compliance challenges. And this is something that I'm running into at my work as well because of the requirements placed on us. We happen to use a secure enclave that does depend on SMS authentication, which obviously that's going to be phasing out in the near future. So I'm curious what direction we're going to wind up going with that. So we will definitely keep an eye on that one moving forward. Our next article comes to us from TechCrunch, and apparently I didn't write the headline down here. Pro-Israeli hacktivist group claims responsibility for an alleged Iranian bank hack. The hacktivist group Predatory Sparrow, believed to align with pro-Israeli interests, has claimed responsibility for a disruptive cyber attack against Iran's state-owned bank SEPA, asserting that they, quote, destroyed the data associated with the bank's financial operations. The attack resulted in widespread outages across Iran's banking network, closing branches and impacting ATMs nationwide, though independent verification remains limited. The action follows several high-impact hacks by the group targeting Iranian infrastructure, marking another escalation in the ongoing digital conflict between Israel and Iran. So the seizure of the bank SEPA's system highlights how cyber conflict now directly threatens financial and payment infrastructures. An alarm bell for banks and financial enterprises worldwide to prioritize their cyber resilience. And while labeled as a hacktivist operation, Predatory Sparrow operates with methods and impact resembling state-sponsored cyber weaponry, forcing enterprises to treat such threats as they would advanced persistent threats. The group's reference to internal collaborations underscores the need for zero trust, privileged access management, and internal threat detection capabilities to mitigate the insider-assisted cyber threats. The one interesting thing here, obviously, I would not expect the Iranian cyber systems to have the same level of resilience that we have in the United States. I don't know what standards they adhere to. I don't know what regulatory mandates they have. But this highlights the fact that, the article discusses possible insider threats here. Now, those insider threats, if this happens to be, as it's being speculated upon, an Israeli government-backed group, it's entirely possible that those insider threats happen to be, intelligence agents working for Mossad or disgruntled residents or anything. But once you have an insider threat like that, all bets are off. I mean, they can exfiltrate information. They can plant malicious code that can be executed later on. They can they're more effective at human intelligence when you're a trusted person on the inside. It doesn't strike too many people as suspicious if you start asking for access or credentials or something like that. So this is an interesting take in I want to say warfare, because that's really what this is at this point. Any kind of hot war that breaks out is going to be supported and reliant on cyber warfare as well. And if anything else, this kind of needs to bring that to light and make us all aware of that. We're going to take a quick break before we move on here. I would invite all of our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You could find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Technology. You can find video and audio of all the network's podcasts listed as Insights into Things. I would also ask you to write in, give us your feedback. Tell us how we're doing, what we can do better, what we're wrong about, what we're right about. You can email comments at insightsintothings.com, or you can call us and leave a voicemail for us at 856-403-8788. Again, that's 856-403-8788. And we'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. Next up is an article to us from The Record. Your office suite called. It's free and open. Denmark's Ministry of Digitalization has announced it will ditch Microsoft Windows and Office 365 in favor of Linux and LibreOffice, completing the transition by November of 2025, which is pretty ambitious considering its prevalent throughout the government. The primary motivation, digital sovereignty, not just cost cutting. As Minister Carolyn Stage Olsen emphasized, the need to reduce reliance on foreign tech giants and retain autonomy over national digital infrastructure. Copenhagen and Aarhus are following suit, citing similar concerns over market dominance, geopolitical risk, and the looming end of life for Windows 10 support. Officials also stress they've built fallback plans to revert to Microsoft if needed, preserving operational resilience. So this is multi-factor here. So it's hard to not attribute a decision like this to some of the ongoing hostile policies towards foreign governments that the current administration has adopted. You have a lot of people, a lot of governments out there that are doing everything they can to cut their reliance and their dependence and their interactions with the United States because of how unpredictable the environment is right now and how erratic some of the decision-making processes are, which ultimately is going to hurt the United States. I'm not sure why we would take up such a position like that where we are deliberately weakening ourselves on the international stage and basically deciding to take a step back and no longer be a world leader. We're content being a third world country and I guess letting China or Russia or somebody else lead at this point in time. And other countries are seeing that. So when they see that, it's very difficult for them to want to invest in products that come out of the United States, which in turn are going to cause economic problems for the United States. The other problem here, the other major factor is Microsoft is kind of doing it to themselves. And I'm running into this at my place of work as well. This irrational push and requirement for everyone to purchase new hardware. You have perfectly good hardware running Windows 10 now, and there's no justifiable reason from a resource standpoint as to why you can't continue to use that. It's costing people a lot of money. It's costing businesses. It's costing governments. When a government has perhaps tens of thousands of workstations that are licensed with Windows, and those all have to be upgraded in order to maintain compliance because Microsoft said so, that's a quick way to turn your customers off. And it's really, honestly, it's very foolish on the part of Microsoft, especially since they're not a particularly prominent player in the hardware market. I think you could make an argument that they're kind of go the Apple route where they want to control the ecosystem and they want to make sure that they're on hardware that they know they can support. And that's well and good. You can do that when you control the entire stack of technology. Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't. They dabbled in the hardware side of things, but Microsoft they're a software company. They're never going to control the hardware. They're never going to hope to control the hardware. And for them trying to go this route here at this stage when they've got such wide deployment of their products, it's silly. It really is. It's going to shoot them in the foot. It's going to cost them money, and it's costing the United States prestige now because people see these things, and it's a real problem. So I don't think this is the last. I certainly don't think this is the last time we're going to hear about something like this happening. But I think every time this happens, it's another chink in the armor of Microsoft and the United States, and it's not going to end well in the long run for us. Next up, we have an article from dark reading. When trust falls, zero trust rises. NIST has released special publication 1800-35, delivering 19 real-world example implementations of zero trust architecture using commercially available tools. Developed over 4 years with 24 industry collaborators, this guide moves beyond the abstract zero trust theory to offer technical designs, test results, troubleshooting assistance, and best practices. The emphasis on phased deployment, including inventorying your assets, defining least privileged access, integrating identity and multi-factor authentication, and monitoring continuously and iterating updates and continuous improvement are all part of the philosophy. And this philosophy emphasizes that zero trust is a journey, not a destination. So we had talked about zero trust architecture in one of our deep dives, and we kind of touched on it at the 30,000 foot level. To be honest with you, I didn't go too deep into specifics with it. I just kind of wanted to introduce it. And now we're getting NIST is coming out with more details. These blueprints that they're giving us aren't generic diagrams. They're proven off-the-shelf implementations with real configurations, test data, and troubleshooting notes. Now, having something that comprehensive is a good thing for the end user, the administrators, rather, who are trying to implement these. Where it kind of starts to hit a controversial area is NIST actually advocating specific types of hardware, software, and vendor relationships that might be construed as inappropriate. And a lot of time, the vagarity of some of these statements that come out is designed to ensure neutrality when it comes to things like this, and that they're not endorsing anyone. So that's kind of a slippery slope that they're going down here. So the examples that they have map directly to NIST's cybersecurity framework, the NSP special publication 853 controls, smoothing parts to compliance with both FedRAMP and DFARS requirements. I had to throw that in there for my own benefit, given the push that my company is engaged in as far as CMMC goes. So I don't have a problem with this myself. If the government doesn't provide me with recommendations, I have to go find them anyway. So it's nice for them to give me, at the very least, real world examples of who does what and what technology they have. I may not opt to go with them, but at least it's a starting point to go do research and get quotes from multiple companies that can solve that problem for me. So kudos to NIST for this. I think we probably need more of this. This is going to help organizations, especially in light of the administration's policy of moving away from being a leader at the government level of cybersecurity and trying to force that down onto the commercial and enterprise space. Providing more information to those entities, I think, is a good thing. Security Week brings us our next article. Discontinued but not disarmed. CISA has issued a warning about an active exploit targeting a critical command injection vulnerability in multiple discontinued TP-Link router models, specifically the TLWR940N, the WR841N, and the WR740N. These models, lacking ongoing vendor support and firmware updates, some since 2015 to 2018, are exposed to multiple attackers who can execute arbitrary commands with the web management interface. A proof of concept exploit surfaced on GitHub before being taken down, confirming the risk is real, and CISA has slapped this flaw onto its known exploited vulnerabilities list, advising agencies and organizations to retire these routers by July 7th, 2025. Now, it's worth noting that several of these routers are consumer-grade routers, so why government agencies would be running them in the first place is another problem. But this also highlights the ongoing problem with abandoned devices becoming invitations for attackers. Organizations need to track and retire unsupported hardware. I just retired 3 or 4 access points here. They're not end of life here, but I replaced them with newer USB, Unify Pro 7 Maxes, I think. And I replaced my 4 lights. So I'm down to 3 access points from the 4 that I had previously with the old model. But I wanted to get those out of here before they were end of life. Now, Ubiquiti is usually pretty good about end of lifing their stuff and giving you notifications, but other companies like TP-Link are not. We see this on an almost regular basis. This isn't just a minor misconfiguration either. Command injection at the network edge gives attackers near system level control, and fully compromised devices could pivot deep into corporate networks. So you definitely need to get these out of your corporate and enterprise networks. If you have them, you shouldn't have them in the first place. The issue underscores the importance of network segmentation, zero trust at edge nodes, and eliminating single points of failure in unmanaged or consumer-grade infrastructure. So definitely get this stuff cleaned up. This is a pretty simple no-brainer here to get these out of your network. But it also highlights the fact that a lot of companies out there don't have an on-staff IT department. You might have an MSP you work with. You might have an IT consultant that comes in. You might just have somebody's cousin who knows stuff about computers who may do pro bono work for you. It's those situations where you might not have the in-depth understanding of what your network infrastructure looks like and what your production infrastructure equipment is comprised of, where you run the most risks here. So be aware of that. Ask questions. Don't just assume everything is safe and okay. If you engage with an MSP or an IT consultant, ask questions about antiquated hardware. What's their policy? How do they get rid of them? How do they detect them? If you're not doing it yourself, you need to at least be aware of the security risks, and you need to start asking questions to make sure the people that are doing the work are doing it correctly. And that was all we had for this week. I didn't have any shout outs this week. I didn't have a chance to write anything down. I'll try to pick those up on the next episode. Before we go, I do want to once again invite our listening and viewing audience. If you don't already do so, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio-only versions of this podcast listed anywhere you get a normal podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, and so forth. We're listed as Insights into Technology for audio only. And if you want video versions of this or any of our other podcasts, we do both audio and video on our main site at www.insightsintothings, or you can look us up as Insights into Things on your podcast trackers. I would also invite you to give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. It's always wonderful when people tell us what we're doing and respond to some of the things we're talking about here. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com, or you can dial in and give us a voicemail at our phone number, which is 856-403-8788. Again, that's 856-403-8788. Or you can check out our website for links to all that and more at www.insightsintothings.com. That's it. Another one in the books.